Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are a very new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built a very good reputation for themselves in quite a short period of time. And it is also worth remembering that the guys behind this company have quite a bit of background when it comes to craft beer in Japan. So it's nice to see them venturing into the brewing side of things, and there's quite a few people in Japan and the craft beer scene here that are starting to do this, so a lot of breweries popping up over here at the moment, I have to say. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I've heard these guys can do very well. This one is a recommendation from someone that I trust quite a lot when it comes to picking out Japanese craft beers, so I do have high hopes for this one. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Nagakuta in Aichi Prefecture, which is just out to the east of Nagoya, almost right in the middle of Japan, and we're going to have a look at my first beer then from Totopia Brewery. So this particular beer is called Redphobia. It comes in at 7.3% ABV, and this is another New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this is another beer that I picked up from liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Aichi here in Osaka, and I'll put the link to their Facebook page in the video description below. That's where I get pretty much all of the Japanese beers that I review. But yeah, this is one that Rika picked out for me, and they had a few different styles there, but most of them were IPAs. She told me they were very good at IPAs, and this was her favourite one that they had at the time. So yeah, she's always pointed me in the right direction before, so I thought, why not just do it again this time? But yeah, the Redphobia at 7.3% ABV, it's got a nice hop bill on it. We'll need to see how we get on with this one then. So let's crack on and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I can hopefully do in the future from Totopia Brewery. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries there. You will find this beer in the Japanese playlist, along with a number of others that's being added to quite regularly at the moment while I'm here in Japan, and we will no doubt continue to add to that as time goes forward. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage as well and search for beer using the geography tagging system. Just go to the search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like, and if I've reviewed beers from that area, they will pop up. Failing that though, just check out the playlist of beers from different countries and see what you find. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Totopia Brewery. So, Totopia Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in a little place called Nagakuta in Aichi Prefecture, just to the east of Nagoya, here in Japan. But the brewery was founded back in 2022, and it's the latest venture of the team behind the beer pub Brick Lane in Nagoya City. So Beer Pub Brick Lane was founded back in 2014 by Junya Morita and his wife Akiko, along with 3 other friends, and it's become a really well-known beer bar and burger spot in the city, so somewhere that I do need to visit. But the following year they started the Nagoya Craft Beer Map, and they started doing market research in the US in order to form their own import company, and they began importing American craft beers into Japan in 2017. So they then opened their own beer shop, which is called Used Like New Beer, in 2018, and this also acts as a sandwich shop as well. But at this point they decided they wanted to get into brewing beer, and they started planning to form their own brewery. So the name Totopia was chosen as a combination of the Japanese word toto, which means like precious, valuable, revered, and also utopia. I think everyone really knows what a utopia is, an ideal society, all of these kind of things. But the location of the brewery had originally been decided as Seto City in Nagoya, but this had to be changed quite suddenly, and they found the current plot of 600 square metres in Nagakuta. But the brewery released their first beers during the second half of 2022, and they plan to focus on using local ingredients in their beers and harvesting their own hops, and that's something that they're looking at doing in that area that they're based in, because they've got quite a big plot. But as of April 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 25 different beers so far, according to Untappd, and they will no doubt add more to that as time goes on. They seem to be quite a prolific brewery, actually. But the parent company for this brewery is called Atowa, and I think that's the parent company of the beer pub Brick Lane, and also the Used Like New beer shop that they have as well. So there's one parent company and these kind of three different brands underneath it, one of which is Totopia Brewing. And you'll find this quite often in Japan. You know, quite a number of sake breweries started brewing beer, so they have the parent company which owns both the sake brewery and the craft beer brewery as well. But yeah, so the parent company here is Atowa. The brewery name is Totopia Brewery. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Totopia Brewery for the moment. I'm sure we'll have more to add to the notes in the near future, but I do need to get up to Nagoya actually. It seems that things are kind of kicking off there, and there's a few breweries up there doing some interesting stuff. The old school one really is Y Market Brewing. I need to go and have a little look at their tap room, but to go and visit these venues like Beer Pub Brick Lane and the brewery itself, if they've got a little tap room there, would definitely be quite cool. But yeah, that is everything we need to say about Totopia Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, once again, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on then and have a little look at this beer itself. So this can, I should point out, is a half litre, 500 millilitres, so a little bit unusual in Japan to get cans this size still, but there are more and more breweries starting to do it. The ones that really kicked this off, I think, were West Coast Brewing, based up in Shizuoka Prefecture. But this beer cost me, I believe, 1,150 yen, if I'm remembering correctly. So yeah, it is a little bit more pricey. Craft beer is a bit pricey here in Japan, but yeah, 1,150 yen is somewhere in the region of $10 American, about €9 and maybe about £8 sterling, something like that. So yeah, a wee bit more pricey to get your craft beers here in Japan, but that's just how it goes. So yeah, the Redphobia, 7.3% ABV. The hops in this one are Galaxy, Nelson Sauvin and Mosaic, so you've got a bit of Australia, New Zealand and America respectively there. Galaxy, as we know, 14% alpha acid, gives you quite a pungent passion fruit and pineapple in my experience, can also give you a wee bit of grapefruit as well. Nelson Sauvin, the New Zealand one, 16% ABV. 16% alpha acid, I should say, sorry. It gives you that lovely kind of white, green, grapey sort of thing. And then Mosaic, 14% alpha acid American, gives you a beautiful kind of tangerine flavour. But you can see, really nice can artwork on this one. And this was released all at the same time. I forget what the white one was called, but they released two beers at the same time. One was called Redphobia, the other one had a kind of similar artwork to it, but was had a white label. I just like the hop bill on this one better, and this was the one that Rika said was her favourite too. So yeah, 7.3%, double dry hopped, hazy IPA this. Let's get it out into the glass and see what it's all about. So, let's do this. To say, this does look pretty nice actually, and it's cool to see more and more breweries just popping up over the, you know, all across Japan, and that, you know, people that have had beer pubs and things want to actually start their own breweries and things on the side of that too. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer has poured pretty much as you would expect from a New England hazy IPA. A little bit more head on it, but I think I gave it a bit of an aggressive pour, in fairness. But you can see over a finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head. You can see a few bigger bubbles sticking toward the top of the head there, but some foamier ones underneath. And yeah, this beer is one of the lighter New England IPAs I can say I've come across over the last little while. So for me, this is a lovely kind of bright mango juice colour. I always like comparing the colours of New England IPAs to different fruit juices, because they just remind me of that, to be honest. But yeah, one or two big bubbles of carbonation sticking toward the bottom of the glass, and a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look pretty nice. But like I say, lovely kind of bright yellow colour to this one. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil plays a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put in will affect the colour of your beer as well. But yeah, when it comes to IPAs, you don't often have to care about those latter 2 variables in there. But yeah, this one looks pretty nice. In terms of the level of haze in this beer, it's certainly not the soupiest and gloopiest of New England IPAs that I've come across. But remember, the level of haze in these beers depend on the oak content, the wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you're using as well. But yeah, it has a nice level of haze to it, this one. Like I say, not the soupiest and gloopiest, but yeah, it looks as you would expect from a New England hazy IPA. But yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the appearance of this one. We can have a wee look at the aroma and see what it's all about. Let's do this. Ooh, I have to say the aroma of this one is very, very nice actually. So, first impression of this beer, it's very soft and juicy New England IPA. Quite oaty leaning, and quite a little bit of barley malt coming out of this one, but maybe a little bit of wheaty bitiness. It's actually got a really nice balance in terms of the aroma, but I would say it's kind of more oaty and barley malt leaning. But yeah, as I've said, when it comes to New England IPAs, for me there are 6 different things to think about when it comes to the flavours and aromas of these beers. So first off, you have the kind of the farmhousey yeasty type character, and also the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those tend to be a bit more prominent in American brewed New England IPAs in my experience. But yeah, you've also got wheaty bitiness, barley malt bread, the oaty creaminess, and the sweet side of things. And you will see that there's varying degrees of each of these components in this particular beer style, and it just depends on what brewery or the individual recipe and things. But for me, this is quite a, just from the aroma that I've seen so far, it's quite a barley malt and oaty leaning New England IPA. But I've got a feeling this one, just from the aroma, I think it's going to have a little bit of a kind of citrusy and wheaty zippy character to it once we get into it. So yeah, it should be quite nice. But yeah, in terms of the aroma, this I have to say is pretty damn nice. I think this is going to be a good beer. We can definitely say that. So let's just break the aroma down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. Yeah, so the backbone of this beer for me, there's a lovely little bit of a kind of white bready, bread crusty character in there. I really like how that goes together. On top of that, fluffy, fresh white bread for sure. There's a little bit of a kind of crackery and woody character coming out of this beer too, which I think is really, really nice. So yeah, fresh white bread crust, a little bit of woodiness in there, cracker on top of it, then the fluffy white bread. And like I said, you can smell that there is a wee touch of wheat in here. Just it's quite a smooth wheat in fairness, but at the back of the nose I really get a little bit of the kind of bitiness that you can sometimes get from the wheaty side of a New England IPA. But yeah, aroma wise, this is really nice on the malty side of things. One thing I'll say about this beer too is that it doesn't have such a big sweet component to it. In fairness though, this is a single New England IPA rather than a double, which means, you know, it tends to be the doubles and triples and things like that that will show you more of a sweet component. But yeah, for me, this one really is more kind of bready and oaty and stuff like this. But above the wheaty layer, you can smell the oats. And as I've always said with New England IPAs, oats are a very good indicator of how fresh your beer is. So the creamier the oats smell and taste, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older the beer tends to be in my experience. But with this one, you've got a little bit of a mixture there. You can smell some of the creaminess of the oats in there and the smoothness of them, but there is a wee touch of dryness to the oaty character as well. Like I said though, this beer doesn't have so much in the way of a sweet component in the aroma, but you do get a little hint of like Werther's Original butter candy, and or maybe a little bit of biscuit in there. But for me, this is a more kind of bready, like sort of bready example of a New England IPA, and it really leans towards a little bit more of a kind of drier oaty character as well. But yeah, I really like how this one goes together actually. It smells a little bit old school. It reminds me of when the New England IPA first arrived in Sweden, and they were kind of more bready and dry and stuff like this. The likes of the Amazing Haze, the GBG Beer Week 2016 from Stigbergs, or the Narangi from OO Brewing, the New Sweden from Opigårds. These ones were, you know, this reminds me of the more kind of old school Swedish New England IPAs. But lovely aroma on the malty side of things, I have to say that. Really nice stuff. In terms of the green component, this beer is quite interesting. As I've said, when it comes to IPAs, you have 3 different kinds of hoppings. Assuming you have a 90-minute wort boil, you have early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness. Late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, that gives you mainly flavour and aroma, but a little bit of bitterness. Dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, that gives you pretty much completely flavour and aroma. So yeah, the New England IPAs tend to use the latter 2, late addition and dry hopping. West Coast IPAs use all 3, and what that translates to in the aroma is early addition hopping gives you a more deep, dank green component, whereas late addition and dry hopping gives you a brighter kind of green component, and you can smell that right away in this one. This has got quite a bright and kind of pungent floral aromaticity to it. The green component really leans toward that floral side of things. But that said, you do get a little touch of earthiness in this one, which I would say comes from the that comes from the mosaic, to be honest with you. So yeah, the mosaic is giving you that little touch of earthiness in there. There's a wee bit of herbal character too, but the green component really leans toward a more kind of floral aromatic sort of thing. Lovely bright floral aromaticity, and round at the front of the nose you're getting a lot of kind of zesty, grassy character as well. The fruity side of this beer is pretty much as you would expect if you know these hops. So for me, there's quite a bit of a pungent passion fruit in there, a good little bit of mango and pineapple as well. That's your Galaxy that's giving you that. And then further forward on the nose, you're getting some more oily characteristics. So there's, yeah, a lot of kind of green gooseberry, green white grapes and gooseberry kind of notes coming out of this one. That's your Nelson Sauvin, and you are getting a little bit of tangerine orange. I would say in the fruity character, the mosaic and its orangey notes are taking a bit of a back seat to the Nelson Sauvin and the Galaxy. I don't know whether it's a 33-33-33 ratio that these hops have been used. It could be something else, but yeah, the way that it goes together I think is very, very nice. The aroma is kind of what you'd expect. I'm pretty sure I've had this combination a few times. But yeah, it's a nice kind of well-rounded one. A bit of mosaic from the US, a bit of Galaxy from Australia, and Nelson Sauvin, the classic New Zealand hop. A wee bit of all the good hop producing countries are, well, the modern ones. Germany and Slovenia are also doing some very good hops these days too. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the aroma for this beer. So we should crack on and have a wee taste of it and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Redphobia, a 7.3% double dry hopped New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Totopia Brewery in Nagakuta, in just outside of Nagoya in Aichi Prefecture here in Japan. Another new Japanese brewery ticked off the list. Slanja, skål, cheers, kampai. Yeah, I have to say that's pretty damn solid actually. Yeah, really very nicely done IPA actually, up there with the Swedish and Danish things that I would drink normally. So yeah, and one thing I would say is the Japanese breweries are getting better and better every year actually, and you're getting more of them being more adventurous and trying the more modern styles like New England hazy IPAs. Because for a wee while in Japan, you know, Isakadoya and Shigakogen beer were the ones that were really kind of the more pioneering breweries and trying a lot of these different styles. They're probably two of the kind of most talented old school breweries, but Mino here in Osaka were very strong too. But now you've got the likes of West Coast, you've got Uchu as well. These guys obviously are very solid in New England IPAs, and there will be other breweries that I haven't quite come across yet who will be very solid too. But yeah, this is a really very, very nice and easy-going New England IPA, this one. The first impression that I have of it is that it's very smooth and it's quite a well-balanced one. I think my impression of the aroma actually has played out quite well with the flavour of this one. This was one of these beers where the flavour and aroma do match up quite well. So yeah, really nice beer. So thumbs up to Totopia Brewery for this one. This is a damn solid beer. And I'll need to try a few different styles from it, I think, based on this one. This is very good. So let's try and break this beer down for you a wee bit and describe a bit more in depth. My first impression of it is the malty side of things is really nicely balanced. You've got a lovely green component to it and some soft fruity notes to this beer as well. But yeah, as I say, lovely stuff. Let's have a wee look at this one and break the flavour down for you properly though. So, in terms of the middle third of your palate then, I'd say overall this is a really just soft and lovely drinkable New England IPA. But yeah, middle third of your palate, you can feel that the backbone of this beer, you get that soft white bready bread crust to this one. That's your backbone. On top of that, there's a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker in there and potentially just a little touch of woodiness further forward on that middle third of your palate. Above that, you get a little bit of a. Above that, you're getting a little bit of a more. There's a wee touch of like a kind of thin, brown wholemeal bready layer. Then you get the fluffier white bread. Then you can feel a little touch of wheat in there. But then you get quite an oaty character out of this one. This beer for me, like I say, in terms of the New England IPA, this is quite a barley malt leaning one and a soft kind of oaty one too. Those are the two components of it that really stick out to me most on the malty side of things. A lot of people underestimate the importance of the malts in New England and West Coast IPAs, but for me, you've got to have a good malt base to balance out the beer. But like I say, this one's very layered. A little bit of fresh white bread crust, Jacob's cream cracker, a little touch of woodiness, wee bit of brown bread, fluffier white bread, a kind of layer of smooth wheat in there, and then you can feel the oaty character on top of that. So you've kind of got a circle in the middle of your palate there where you get the oaty kind of creaminess. It's a bit more creamy in the middle, and then it just dries out very gradually as you go toward the edges of your palate there. Perhaps in the very dead centre of your palate, there's a wee bit of there's a little touch of like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing. But yeah, this is one of those beers that these New England IPAs, it's a little bit more bready and smooth leaning rather than being than having a big sweet component to it. But lovely beer, however you want to look at it. For me, this is really nicely done. It really reminds me of the more old school Swedish brewed New England IPAs that I had back in, like 2014, 2015 kind of time. Yeah, well, 2015 it would have been. I moved to Sweden in 2015. But yeah, I really like that with this one. The malty side of this beer is really, really nicely done. I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate, to be honest with you. And you get a lovely bit of sweetness out of the oats in this beer the further into the aftertaste you go. But let's look at the back third of the palate then. So, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that kind of bready build-up in there. So soft white bread, and you've got similar layers on the back third of your palate, but as I've always said, on the back, further back on the palate, you're going to get the more deep and bitter things, and further forward, you're going to get the smoother and sweeter side of things too. So yeah, on the back third of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that kind of bread crusty sort of thing as well, so you can really feel that. And it's a little bit more dry and grainy, I would say. Above that, you get a little bit of the cracker too, and again, that's a bit kind of drier too. Then you have the fluffy brown bready layer, and that feels a little bit taller and more airy. Then the white bready layers above that, again taller and more airy, and you can feel the wheaty bitiness just creeping on top of that too. And for me, the wheaty character on the back third of the palate does give you that little bit of bitiness that you'd expect. And above everything there's a bit of this more kind of farmhousey white bready note there. So it's got a little touch of woodiness to it, a wee bit of cracker, and almost a little bit of a kind of spicy sort of thing. So yeah, the way that the kind of farmhousey, the yeasty character on the back third of the palate comes out is also very, very nice. But definitely the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour. Just the flavour feels a lot taller. Then as you come forward into the middle third of the palate, it just condenses down and squashes together that wee bit more. So yeah, the malty side of this beer is really nicely done. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things now and the green component first. So yeah, for me, green component is kind of as you would expect from the aroma. It gets more and more floral the further into the aftertaste you go, right enough. But in the back corners of the palate, a little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's a little touch herbal, and then as you push toward the front corners of the palate, it's a wee bit more kind of floral and aromatic too. But round the front curve of the tongue, it's got a little bit of a lighter grassy sort of thing, and yeah, that does go together really nicely. So yeah, a little bit of everything there. But for me, the green component really leans toward the more bright and floral side of things. But this beer isn't too high in terms of IBUs. We'll come to that a wee bit later on though. But yeah, quite a floral component coming out of this one, and I'd say that that's probably most likely associated with the Galaxy in this in the hop profile here. But Nelson Sauvin is quite capable in that regard as well. But yeah, green component is nice. A wee bit more zestiness and grassy character coming out of it the more that I drink of it too. So yeah, let's have a little look at the front third of your palate and the fruity side of things. So yeah, just put the rest of it into the glass. I'm going to enjoy this, why not? So front third of your palate then. The border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of that bready build-up coming out of the beer. So lovely bit of soft white bready character in there. Yeah, so a little bit of soft white bready character. The base of that front third of your palate, there's a wee touch of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing there, and then above that you have the like mainly soft, fluffy white bread. Actually, I really like how that goes together. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And again, this one's kind of, if you know these hops, this beer is really doing exactly what you expect in that regard. At the back of that front third of your palate, there's a wee touch of a pungent grapefruit there. Then as you move further forward, it mellows out and gives you a bit more of a kind of passion fruity note. There's a bit of I get quite a bit of juicy mango in this one too, and as you reach the dead centre of that front third of your palate, it's got a bit more of a it has more of a like it has a bit more of a kind of apricot-y, papaya note, and a wee bit of pineapple on top. These are all the things you can get from Galaxy. Galaxy is one of these hops that's complex enough to work very well as a single. To work well on a single hop IPA. Citra is one of the other ones that is very capable in that regard too. But when you move into the front half of the front third of your tongue with this beer, it's about the Mosaic and the Nelson Sauvin. So you can feel on the tip of your tongue there. You can feel there you're getting more of that kind of white, green, grapey character from the Nelson Sauvin forming the base. It's a little bit of it's got a bit more of an oily gooseberry to it, this beer actually. But then on top of that, you get the bright, orangey, citrusy notes from the Mosaic. Yeah, and I think you get more and more of the orange out of this one the further into the aftertaste you go. The fruity, the hops in this one, I think this has to be like a 33-33 ratio of hopping in this beer. I think it really goes together quite well in that regard, because you can detect all the hops equally well. But I get more and more citrusy, orangey zest out of this beer the further into the aftertaste you go, and a wee bit more of the kind of zest from the passion fruit as well, which is quite interesting. But yeah, overall, this is a very, very nice beer for me. I think they've done a really good job of this, but a nice, light, drinkable IPA, I have to say. And yeah, a little bit, like I say, it reminds me of, you know, Stig Berget's Amazing Haze, OO Brewing, Narangi, and, you know, New Sweden from Opigårds in Sweden, and some of the really old school, like Gamma and Dry and Bitter New England IPAs too. It's one of these more kind of bready and oaty leaning ones, not so sweet and not quite as thick as some of them are today. It's got a little bit more of a kind of zippy character to it as well, but I like it. I really do like how this goes together. It's a big thumbs up from me. Let's round off this review with just a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So for me, this is, I would say this beer, it's kind of right in the middle of the spectrum for me. Mid-bodied, carbonation is very, very smooth. This one has quite a bit of a creamy mouthfeel to it, but it's not overly thick, if that makes sense. It's a bit creamy, but at the same time it has a wee bit of a zip to it. The more that you drink of this beer, I think you get more and more wheatiness coming out of this one, in fairness. I think that's something I haven't really said in the review so far. But yeah, you get more and more kind of wheaty zippiness coming out of this one. And yeah, I do like how it goes together. Actually, the bready character in this really is a more kind of bready, wheaty and oaty leaning New England IPA. Really not so sweet and things actually, but yeah, more and more wheaty the more I drink of it. It's interesting how this beer kind of transitions and just develops the more that you drink of it too. In terms of the IBUs in this one, I think this is maybe about I think it's either 30. It's 30 IBUs minimum, but it could be pushing 40. I actually get more and more bitterness out of this beer the further into the aftertaste that I go, but it could just be the kind of floral and grassy zest with this one. It does have quite a bit of that, and the sort of wheaty bite that you get out of this beer as well kind of promotes that a wee bit. So yeah, a good little bit of, there's a good wee bit of kind of like bitter feeling character to this one, but I don't think this is more than 40 IBUs. It's 30 or 40 IBUs, I would say. The malt base, like we said, has a bit of dryness to it, but a bit of smoothness and a wee touch. It's got quite a little touch of creaminess to it as well from the oats, but this beer gets more and more wheaty. Then you've got a lovely mix of fruity character in this one, a bit of tropical fruit in there, a bit of oily fruit, and then the kind of zestier orange and citrusy character the further into the aftertaste you go. But a lovely, lovely beer, and it gets a big thumbs up from me, I have to say. I really think they've done a good job of this, and this is a very good first impression of Totopia Brewery, actually. But let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Redphobia, a 7.3% double dry hopped New England IPA from Totopia Brewery, just outside of Nagoya in Aichi Prefecture here in Japan. I'll need to keep an eye on what these guys are doing and try a few different styles from them. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Totopia Brewery as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But yeah, this was a lovely beer, and I will be keeping an eye on this brewery going forward. So yeah, check out Liquor Shop Asahiya, check out Totopia Brewery and their beer pub Brick Lane, and Used Like New Beer as well if you end up in Nagoya. But hopefully we can go up there and do some out and about videos at some point. But until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, see you guys in the next review.